The company is restructuring. We are downsizing several departments, and we have made the decision that today will be your last day at Nexus Technologies.
Imran Malik emergency shift, unpaid, again. Tell me how we evaluate performance at this company.
We use KPI metrics.
34 emergent shifts. Is that in your KPI system? No, I'm looking for your Baba. Is he home?
Baba, someone is here for you. You can come in. Baba doesn't have bad friends.
Full cinematic story. They fired a quiet single dad, but the CEO discovered a secret that changed everything. He came every day before everyone else, and left after everyone else. But no one ever asked why. A man who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, but smiled like everything was fine. Nobody noticed him. Nobody asked about him. That was exactly what he wanted. The office of Nexus Technologies buzzed every morning with energy, ambition, and the smell of fresh coffee. Colleagues gathered near the break room, laughing about weekends and trading gossip about promotions. Phones rang. Keyboards clicked. The whole floor felt alive with noise and personality. But one desk, the one near the corner window, half hidden behind a tall filing cabinet, was always silent. Imran Malik arrived every morning at 7:45, a full 15 minutes before his shift began. He never stopped to chat. He never joined the lunch table conversations. He simply sat down, opened his computer and worked, head low, eyes focused, completely invisible to the world around him. His colleagues had quietly nicknamed him the Ghost. Not out of cruelty, but because he was always present, yet somehow never truly there. He existed in the background of the office like a piece of furniture, noticed only when missing. What nobody knew was that before arriving at this desk every morning, Imran had already lived through half a day. He woke at 5:30, made breakfast for his 6-year-old daughter Aya, carefully combed her hair, packed her school bag, walked her to the bus stop, waited until she was safely on board, then took 2 crowded buses across the city to reach Nexus on time, and every single evening, after the office lights dimmed and his colleagues headed to restaurants and home to their families, Imran took one more bus to the hospital. His wife had died in a car accident 3 years ago. Since that night, Imran had been doing everything alone. The cooking, the school runs, the bedtime stories, the hospital visits, the bills, the prayers. He had built a life out of discipline and silence, holding everything together with steady hands and a quiet heart. Nobody in that office knew any of this, and Imran had never once told them. They called him in with a smile and destroyed his world in 60 seconds. He had given this company 3 years of his life, and they didn't even know his daughter's name. He didn't argue, he didn't beg, because a man carrying too much pain has no energy left for anger. On a gray Thursday morning, Imran received a short email at 9 o'clock. Please report to the HR conference room at 10 a.m. Management. He read it twice, straightened his jacket, saved his work, and walked calmly down the corridor. Inside the conference room, HR manager Sandra Webb sat behind the table with her hands folded and a thin document already printed and positioned in front of the empty chair. She smiled the particular smile of someone preparing to deliver bad news while maintaining professional distance. She told him that the company was restructuring, that difficult decisions had been made, that after careful evaluation of department performance, his position had been identified for elimination. She used clean corporate words that were designed to make the moment feel less like what it actually was. Then she slid the termination letter across the table. Imran looked at the document. He saw his name. He saw today's date. He saw the word terminated. He picked up the pen sitting beside it, and he signed. He said only one word. Okay. Sandra had prepared herself for arguments, for tears, for the kind of desperate negotiation she often saw in these meetings. She was not prepared for quiet acceptance. She opened her mouth to offer the standard closing remarks, but Imran had already stood, nodded politely, and walked out. In the empty corridor outside, he stopped. He pressed his back against the wall and closed his eyes for 3 seconds. Aya's next hospital treatment payment was due the following Friday. He had been counting on this month's salary to cover it. He had been counting on next month's salary to cover what came after that. He opened his eyes. He walked back to his desk, took the small cardboard box from under his chair, and began placing his things inside. A pen, a notepad, and at the very top, handled with the same care one gives fragile and irreplaceable things, a child's crayon drawing, a stick figure man and a tiny girl standing beneath a large yellow sun, with the words, "Best Baba in the World" written along the bottom in unsteady, hopeful handwriting. A man standing in the rain with a box of his entire career and nowhere to go. He wasn't crying about the job, he was trying to figure out what to tell a 6-year-old who believed her father could fix anything. This is the part they never show, the bus ride home after everything falls apart. It was raining when Imran stepped out of the Nexus building. He had not brought an umbrella. He rarely did. He stood at the bus stop with the cardboard box pressed against his chest, rain soaking through his blue jacket and flattening his hair against his forehead. He kept the box tilted slightly inward, making sure Aya's drawing stayed dry. On the bus, an older woman glanced at his wet face and asked if he was all right. He told her he was fine. He was not fine. His mind was running calculations. Severance pay against hospital bills, against rent, against school fees, against food, against medicine. And the numbers refused to balance no matter how many times he rearranged them. He arrived home at 3:15 in the afternoon, 2 hours earlier than usual. The apartment door burst open before he had finished climbing the last stair. Aya launched herself at him with the particular fearless energy of a child who has never once doubted that her father will catch her. She wrapped her thin arms around his waist and looked up at him with eyes that were her mother's eyes. Wide, warm, and completely trusting. She told him she had drawn something at school today. She pulled his hand through the doorway and led him to the kitchen table where a fresh drawing waited. It showed a tall man inside a large building surrounded by golden stars. She explained that the man was him, at work, and the stars were there because he was the best worker in the whole entire world. Imran sat down at the kitchen table. He looked at the drawing for a long time, and then, very quietly, with his shoulders perfectly still so his daughter would not see, he wept. He almost closed the file. One small note at the bottom changed everything. The truth was sitting in the data the whole time. Nobody had bothered to read it. He wasn't looking for a story, but the numbers told him one he could not ignore. Daniel Harper, CEO of Nexus Technologies, was not supposed to be in the building at 11 o'clock at night, but a quarterly audit review was scheduled for the following morning, and the performance files had arrived late, so he sat alone in his glass-walled office working through them. Names, departments, output metrics, nothing unusual. Then one employee ID began appearing repeatedly in the emergency operations log. ID, IM 2847, Imran Malik. Daniel frowned and clicked deeper into the file. Over the previous 11 months, this one employee had covered 34 emergency weekend shifts, all unpaid. He had stayed past midnight on 12 separate occasions when company systems crashed, restoring operations and documenting the recovery process, filing no overtime claim for any of it. He had covered 6 absent colleagues without once submitting a formal substitution request. His manager's performance rating read simply, average. Daniel sat back in his chair and stared at the screen. He pulled up the day's termination report. Imran Malik, terminated. Reason, routine downsizing. Average performance profile. He looked at the termination report. He looked at the operations log. He looked at the termination report again. Then he called his executive assistant and asked her to pull everything. The complete employee file, the medical insurance records, the HR correspondence, every document connected to this man. He wanted it all on his desk within the hour. The deeper Daniel dug, the worse he felt about what his company had done. He wasn't just a quiet employee. He was a father fighting the hardest war a parent can fight. This company had taken everything from him, and he had never once complained. By 1 a.m, Daniel had the complete picture spread across his desk. Imran had joined Nexus 6 months after losing his wife. No family in the city, no financial safety net, no one to call in an emergency. He had built his entire stability around this job, not because it was glamorous or well-paying, but because it was reliable. And reliability was the one thing a single father raising a sick child could not live without. 8 months ago, Aya had been diagnosed with aplastic anemia, a serious condition in which the bone marrow stops producing enough blood cells. The treatment was long, expensive, and exhausting. Regular hospital visits, medication, blood support, and eventually a bone marrow transplant evaluation. The total projected cost was far beyond anything Imran's salary could cover on its own. He had applied for financial assistance through the hospital, denied. He had filed for government support, still pending 7 months later. He had quietly sold his watch, his camera, and the last of his wife's jewelry. He had stopped eating lunch on most days, redirecting that money toward Aya's medication. He had volunteered for every emergency shift Nexus needed covered, not to build his career, but because each extra hour meant a few more dollars toward Friday's hospital bill. And through all of this, every single morning, he had arrived at his desk on time, sat quietly, done his work, asked for nothing, said nothing. Daniel closed the file and sat in the silence of his empty office for a long time. Then he picked up his phone. Someone was going to answer for what happened to this man. The most dangerous moment for any manager is when the CEO finally reads the file they never bothered to open. They called him average because they never once looked closely enough to see what he actually was. Sandra Webb walked into Daniel's office the next morning, expecting a routine check-in. Daniel was standing at the window with his back to the door. He did not turn around when she entered. He simply placed Imran's complete file on the desk and told her to sit. He asked her to explain how performance was evaluated at Nexus. She began describing the standard process: KPI metrics, peer reviews, managerial assessments. Daniel listened without expression until she finished. Then he told her about the 34 emergency weekend shifts, the 12 midnight system recoveries, the 6 colleagues covered without complaint, the overtime never claimed. He told her all of it, quietly, without raising his voice, which somehow made it worse. He told her about Aya. The room went completely silent. He told Sandra that this man had been providing the company with an extraordinary level of invisible service for nearly 3 years, had never filed a complaint or made a single demand, had been rated average by a manager who had likely never had a direct conversation with him, and had been terminated without anyone reviewing what he had actually contributed. He told her the termination was being reversed immediately. He told her he would be calling Imran personally, and he told her, in a tone that left no room for interpretation, that the evaluation process at this company was going to change, starting now. A CEO driving to a fired employee's apartment was not something anyone expected. Real leadership is not what you do in the boardroom, it is what you do when no one is watching. He was not prepared for what answered the door. Daniel Harper drove to the address himself. No assistant, no driver. He parked on the quiet street, walked up 3 flights of stairs in a building that smelled like cooking and old carpet, and stood in front of a door decorated with children's drawings visible through the small glass panel. He rang the bell. There were fast, small footsteps. Then the door opened. A tiny girl with enormous eyes and a gap-toothed smile looked up at him with complete, uncomplicated curiosity. She was wearing a yellow sweater. She looked tired in the particular way that children managing illness look tired, as though their body is working harder than it should have to. She asked him if he was lost. He told her he was looking for her father. She called Imran's name with the confident authority of a child who has never doubted she will be heard. Imran appeared in the doorway wearing home clothes, his face carrying the particular expression of a man who has not slept. When he recognized Daniel Harper, his expression went completely neutral, not hostile, not surprised, just still, waiting. Daniel asked if he could come in. The apartment was small and meticulously kept. Medicine bottles were lined on the kitchen counter in careful order. Every wall held Aya's drawings. The furniture was minimal, chosen for function. There was nothing unnecessary, nothing wasted. Every object in the room told the story of a man who had learned to live precisely within his means. Aya climbed onto the couch beside Daniel without hesitation and informed him with absolute confidence that her father worked very hard and was the best. Daniel looked at this child. He looked at the medicine bottles on the counter. He looked at Imran sitting across from him with quiet, dignified patience, and for a moment, the CEO of a technology company with several hundred employees could not find a single word to say. Scene 8. The decision, sound, soft street noise below, still apartment, afternoon light. He came to deliver an apology. He left having changed 2 lives completely. This is what accountability looks like, not a memo, not a policy change, a man sitting in someone's living room saying, "I was wrong." For the first time in 8 months, Imran did not have to do the math alone. Daniel looked at Imran directly and told him the truth, that he had reviewed the complete file, that the termination had been made without proper evaluation, and that he accepted full responsibility for what had happened. He did not offer corporate language or procedural explanations. He simply said it was wrong. He told Imran his position was reinstated, effective immediately. He told him his salary would be doubled from the date of reinstatement. He told him every hour of unpaid overtime from the past year had been calculated and would be paid in full within the week. Then he told him about the medical partnership. Nexus Technologies had a long-standing arrangement with St. Mary's Medical Center. He had made the call that morning. Aya's full treatment plan, every appointment, every medication, every procedure, the bone marrow transplant evaluation and whatever followed from it, would be covered completely by the company. The apartment was very quiet. Aya was drawing at the kitchen table, humming something without melody. Outside, a car passed on the wet street below. Imran looked at his daughter. He looked at her for a long time. And then the man who had never complained, never argued, never once asked the world for anything, came undone. Not loudly, not dramatically. His eyes simply filled, and the tears fell, quiet and steady, the way water moves through a crack in something that has held too long. He said he didn't know how to thank him. Daniel told him he didn't need to. He told him to come back, and this time to speak up when something was wrong. Imran said quietly that he had never wanted to be a burden to anyone. Daniel told him he had never been a burden. He had been carrying everyone else's weight for 3 years, and that needed to stop. This is not just Imran's story. This is the story of every quiet person you have ever walked past. The loudest people in the room are not always the hardest working. Sometimes it is the one you never notice. You do not have to be remarkable to the world. You just have to keep showing up. 3 weeks later, Aya sat in a bright hospital room with a drawing pad across her knees, a blanket over her legs, and a fresh box of crayons beside her. She was receiving her first fully covered treatment session. She was drawing steadily and with great seriousness. Imran sat in the chair beside her bed, watching her the way a man watches something he came very close to losing. When she finished, she held the drawing up for him to see. It showed 2 men standing side by side, one in a suit, one in a blue jacket, with a small girl between them. Above them all, in her careful and hopeful handwriting, she had written 4 words. "Good people find each other." Imran took the drawing gently. He held it the same way he had held all her drawings, like something that mattered more than anything else in the room. He looked at it for a long time. He was still a quiet man. He would probably always be a quiet man, but his quiet now was different. It was no longer the silence of someone enduring. It was the silence of someone finally, at last, at rest. Because sometimes, if you hold on long enough, the world turns around and sees what it missed. And sometimes, the most powerful stories ever told are the ones that were never spoken aloud at all. Before you judge the quiet one, in your office, in your classroom, in your life, remember this: silence is not emptiness. Sometimes it is the sound of someone holding everything together with nothing left in their hands.